Welcome once again to our year in review at Vävstuga. I'm going to show you all of the weavings that I and even some of our staff have done in the last year. Starting right here at the table with these lovely little plain weave tablecloths. Now this might be a future warp to go, so if this intrigues you, let us know. It's all the same warp, but here are different colorways. Here's some grays and browns, here's some magenta, and this one focuses on some greens and purples and yellows, and then kind of a teal idea here. So this is a really fun way to play with colors. Speaking of colored, this is our new rainbow towel, and Eva wove a lot of these prototypes, and actually Eva wove those tablecloths you just saw, but she's behind the camera right now. But check out these colors. Can you imagine buying all the yarn and winding this warp at home? You don't have to, because we can wind it for you, and we give you enough to make a little plaid square. We give you a quill of each color to play with, and then just black for the rest of the warp. So you could make several towels, you could make some little tablecloths. So much fun. And here, while we're on the subject of tablecloths, this is a set of 3 tablecloths from our Becky immersion students last year. We had a great group, and you can see all of their personalities here in these tablecloths, which is really quite wonderful. Here we have Janine and Mariel and Kelsey. And I have one other item from our immersion class last year. These towels, Lisa Hill's double deflected weave towels, which you can order as a warp to go from our website. These two are the same warp, so look how different. We use a different weft color over here, and this is the original. The warp and weft colors are the same. And more little tablecloths. This brilliant one here is from our linens class last summer, which was a lot of fun. This little one, I made this a long time ago. I made this sometime in the 80s. It's 35 single linen, which we can't get anymore. But the reason it's in this showing is because I finally hemmed it. So the idea here is that even projects that you're really late on hemming, sometimes you do get around to it. Ooh, let's look at this Monster Party. Here is a cute little runner done on our satin damask warp. And then I made 4 more samples on our pillow, the half satin. And these, you just change only a few cords in the tie-up to change the profile tie-up. And look how different they can be. So very subtle changes in the tie-up for all of that variation in pattern. Here we have at least some of the bands that I did this year. I might be missing a few, but let's take a look at these. We're starting with these plain weave ones. This one I did on a rigid heddle, and it's the Mebelota wool. This one here is part of my band weaving video class, where I design the warp and design the band right on the rigid heddle, and I don't even have a cross or really much of a warp or anything. It's sort of interesting. You might want to check that out. This is a plain weave band in 16/2 cotton on the Vävstuga band loom, and then just a cute little thing on the back side, rigid heddle band with only 5 pattern threads. And this is from my Vävstuga video class for band weaving on the rigid heddle. It's a simple pickup, and here's what I call the classic pickup, very delicate band in finer threads. And then this is the Mebelota, and the same band in the 6/2 wool. And this is an interesting band, 6 shafts on the floor loom, and I tell you how to do this in the video class. I also demonstrate this one in the video class. This is using a rigid heddle on the Vävstuga band loom, so that's an interesting combination of equipment. This is using a special rigid heddle, the double hole rigid heddle, and I give details about how to weave this one also in the video class. for bands. And then here are some more, this classic, this is A2 cotton, the classic pickup pattern with a bunch of plain weave in between, which really indicates this was done on the rigid heddle. This one is also done on the rigid heddle. This has so many patterns. Maybe we'll move this way so you can just see how these patterns just keep going. So that's kind of a fun one. That was a pattern out of one of our Norwegian books that we sell in the store. And it was really intriguing to me because the patterns kept moving. And then here's just a simple chevron done on, I have to remember what I did that on. I did that on a rigid heddle, but I've also done this same pattern on the Vävstuga band a fair amount. And then this is an interesting sort of reversal in colors. It's black pattern threads, an intriguing pattern there. And then a little delicate one using the 35-2 linen lace yarn in the ground and the Möbelota wool for the pattern, which makes a great combination for a delicate band like that. We have over here overshot, and this is a piece that our student Susan did about a year ago, and there's a little bit of leftover warp, so I enjoyed using her colors to this. I thought it was a beautiful color combination. That's all linen in that one. Some of you may know that we took a trip to Sweden last summer. Some of you were probably on that trip. We went to my school, Sätergläntan in Insjön in Dalarna, and took a class in overshot with Stefan Moberg. And these are some of the pieces from that class. This is a little one in hand spun linen, a little square, and just beautiful patterns here. I have a third one. And there is a fourth one, but unfortunately it's not here right now. I think I'll show it to you next year when it's sewn into a pillow cover. But here's a bigger tablecloth that we got to do that was quite lovely. And I managed to squeeze in two of them. And this one was with hand spun linen. They had a nice supply of linen stricks or flax stricks for us to spin. So I spent some late hours spinning and making these really fun pieces. We've had the opportunity to play with some brand new yarns to us this year, and so we're going to show you right now 3 of those. This is a blanket with the new Garnhuset yarn, which is just got exquisite colors. Klaus does a lot of dyeing over gray yarn as well as over white yarn and different shades of gray yarn, and so these are our jars that we sell, which is a great way to design your own colorways and really see what these luscious colors look like. We also have a 33-2 cotton that we are so excited about because it's a thinner cotton than we've ever had before. It makes beautiful fabric for clothing. It's just got finer detail than with our 22-2 cotton. You see we can have plain weave, and here we have a nice twill. It's just got a beautiful, beautiful hand. And so if you like fine threads and you like cotton, you really want to know about this. And our jar is coming soon, but we've got lots of colors. And here you can just see a few of these nice vibrant colors. And then over here we have a double binding rug. And this is our new line of rug wool, which again is super luscious, deep colors. We're going to have fun just dumping this out. You can see how many colors there are. And again, some of them dyed over grays and just exquisite shades. And oftentimes you'll mix these colors. So this rug has a mixture of 2 strands together for each color. And that adds a lot of depth to your piece. We're very honored to have Åsa Viksten Strömbom join us this summer for a class. She is going to be teaching, among other things, how to weave this kind of coverlet. And this is her book, Bound Plot Bev Coverlets. I took the threading right from here for this coverlet, which you see could have a sheepskin backing on it. I haven't done that to this one yet. And then you can just play with the colors. The very interesting thing about this is there are no floats. You would typically think of this if it were in Plot Vev or Monk's Belt, these would be floats, but this is solid, sturdy fabric here. And all of the floats are on the back side. A very interesting structure and a very interesting story that she tells about the structure and where it came from in this book. We also want to let you know that Åsa has another wonderful book, Upplands vävar i ny form. So weavings from Uppland. And I recently wove this cute little baby blanket right out of her book. I thought it was just adorable, and I have a baby shower to go to this Saturday, so here we go. Now, if any of you are interested in this as a special one-time offering warp to go, let us know, because we probably make that happen. So we are lucky enough to have Monica Helene join us, not only last year, but the year before and this year. And so this is a leftover warp from her open rep class that I got to weave off during this last year. So that was a lot of fun. You can see the different colors of weft here, because the warp being opened up like this, you can see the weft colors through, which is really the beauty of this open rep. And let's take a look at this one. Another open rep with a little bit of rose path, and you can see the markings in the fabric coming through, giving that nice textured look. And let's do these two next. So this is a similar warp to the one we just looked at. It's just a bigger checkerboard. Little bit of rose path. I think I only used one treadle of the rose path there. But look how different the very same warp can look with, let's turn it over, with using a bit more of the rose path in the white. So same warp, very different look to it. And then this was so much fun, this inlay with different fabrics and rose path, and then colors, of course, colored rags here, different white rags there, and this really nifty use of the rose path treadles just in a zigzag on the back, and a little button closure. So that's fun. And I was so lucky to have Monica help me with this project that she was pretty excited about helping with, understanding in the Palmgren book. So this is a book by Sigrid Palmgren from the 20s, Swedish weaving book. And I would not have been able to do this without Monica's help. So let me show you how this was done. This is the first warp. This is a woven chenille. And then after putting these skinny strips in, they were very skinny strips of cloth. You cut with scissors between these sections. And then you get this lovely little chenille snake. And then that is what this rug is woven out of. So you use these snakes as the weft. And so it's a really intriguing thing, because the color then gets evenly distributed around, even though you've just made very random color choices here in weaving the original chenille piece. So that was really fun. When you come here, if you come here, you can ask us to pull that out. It's fun to rail into it. And then this one is another rag rug from the Palmgren book, just a 6-shaft block weave, a pretty intriguing structure. And Sarah Jean started out with these really nice colors here, and then kind of ran out of those colors, but it morphed into other variations on a theme. So that was a fun block weave. All of these rag rugs are in this Palmgren book, the Sigrid Palmgren book. This is a little twill, and I did it with 2 different sets. I decided to change it so that the warp would show through a little bit more. And which side do we want to look at? I think we want to look at that side. So here you can see the pattern in the warp more here than in this one. So the materials are different, a different weight from the original book, so we really have to experiment to find the right combination. And wove this one in a session. I set up the warp, but it's a monk's belt. And we can look at the other side too. And so a monk's belt rag rug. Why not? It's in the book, so we had to give it a try. It's a fun experiment. And then this one is just a regular plain weave rag rug, but it's an open rep, so you see the weft colors, but you also see the warp colors. You can see here in the fringe, the warp has this kind of colorway, and if you weave the same rag color crosswise, it looks almost like a bit of a plaid, even though it's a very finer warp and a chunkier weft. So it's an interesting effect. And what else do we have from the Palmgren book this year? This was an interesting structure called Sjusprångsdräll, 7-jump drill. And this is going to be something that we offer in our Dwell on Drill class later this year. All the different drills, we're comparing and talking about what they all are. So this was a very interesting structure that I hadn't done before, so we liked that. These maybe you've seen before, but I finally finished the edges on all of them, so it's my excuse to pull them out. Tanya wove these years ago, and we tried different sets and different yarns. These are dusting cloths. This is a little looser. And actually, the wool makes a really super dusting cloth. You just picture taking these on the top of your loom and on your furniture, and they're very effective. So why not make dusting cloths out of hand-woven fabric? And then we come to some of the projects we've been working on just very recently this winter. And here is the Palmgren book that we've been talking about. And here's this page, for example. So our goal is to weave everything in the book. Actually, I have 4 different books, 4 slightly different versions of the book. So I've compiled everything that's in the book. Oh, and then this page here, that's the page with that chenille rug we just showed you. So that's kind of intriguing. And so anyway, this is a curtain, just a little valance. This little piece could be just at the top of a window. And this is part of a class we're doing this spring called the Palmgren Party, which means we've chosen 8 different projects out of the book and inviting students to come and learn with us as we delve into these things. There's a beautiful twill, and this is in our 22 to Codlin, and it's just got a lovely hand, an 8-shaft twill, a bit of an undulation to it. Here it goes, exit left, and this is an Östergötadrill, so a block weave from Östergötland. They have their own classic style. It's cotton and wool. This could make a nice pillow cover in the class, but also they would make coverlets out of this and quilt them, actually. And then here I've done a few versions of this. That was one reed, and that one we don't need to look at. Exit right. And then this one, let's flip it over. I think we want to look at that side. And are both sides the same? Maybe not. So 2 different reeds. But this fabric is just really intriguing to me. I remember seeing this design even in Sweden many years ago and thinking, what's that? Well, it's soldral, they call it, but it's M's and O's as you would know it, but with a lot of interesting color effect. So that's something we're doing in our Palmgren Party class. This is a piece of upholstery fabric, which I think is really intriguing. It's 16-1 linen in the weft. And I'm going to flip it over because I think this is what we think of as the right side. It's just a navy blue warp, but you mostly see the weft. A combination of plain weave, twill, and this sort of float that's jumping over quite a few threads. So this is the tablecloth, our nice overshot piece. This is a little runner. We're going to let that exit left so we can just focus on the big tablecloth here. This is a single ply linen warp, so it's a fine single ply linen that we get to work with the students to weave on. It's really, really a fun thing to weave and classic pattern. And then this was fun to do. This is a double weave. And we have a few different versions. Down here at the bottom, we have the same warp and weft. Interestingly, that's what the book describes using. But then up here, the picture in the book is this, which is just one color weft. Of course, that weaves up a lot faster, so I made a lot of that. And then here at the end, you look at the width difference. We can get that in the frame. This is with linen. You can see how much wider it ends up if you've woven it with linen. And actually this is a purple linen and a kind of a goldish orange. And so the warp was red and white, but you can push it in different directions depending on what color you choose to weave it with. So our Palmgren party class is something coming right up around the corner in April. We're looking forward to it so much. So we're planning to have another one of these classes every year until we weave everything in the book, so stay tuned. And finally, that brings us to this year's Drawloom weaving, and we have some really exciting things to share with you. Here down at the table, this is a very interesting, it was interesting for me, piece that I did. I actually used a single unit Drawloom, but I had the cords arranged by color for very simple patterning. So it could have been done on a shaft draw, but I did it on a single unit with a simple kind of cord arrangement that is hard to explain right here, but maybe you'll just come and join us for a Drawloom class if you're intrigued by any of this stuff. This is an old piece, but I finally hemmed it, so it gets to be in this year's show. It's probably 20 years old. 8-2 cotton and 16-2 linen, a favorite combination of mine. And here is an Opempta runner that is from last year's warp, but we have the same pattern on this year's warp. It's just a different color warp this year, but this is 21 pattern shafts. And here you can see the pattern is using the 21 pattern shafts, but then these little patterns use a smaller repeat, but it has to still be compatible with this point on 21 shafts, which is an interesting thing to contemplate. And then our warp from ABC. This is a Drawloom ABC warp for Opempta. This is a Drawloom ABC warp for the shaft draw. And what I mean by that is we have a class called Drawloom ABC. The same warp as this, let me show you yet another thing that I did. Ooh, right side up. Okay. This is this year's warp. It's a similar color but slightly different, and an interesting arrangement of the shafts. Here I used just one big point, but on the same setup there were some shafts in the middle of the warp that were on single units, which allowed me to do this pattern in the middle, and then by using colors in the weft, look at how different you can make it. So these are really the same setup. It shows you how versatile just one Drawloom setup can be. And of course, the back side is kind of fun too. And so that's Drawloom ABC. There was a bit of leftover warp on this big blue damask tablecloth that was actually on a loom upstairs in our farmhouse for quite a few years. And I got to weave one more tablecloth off of that warp. And so here this border is symmetrical because these were on little points. So this has to be a symmetrical motif, and this repeats across. But then here I could do something a little different because there were single units to play with. So I just did a simple border and then a simple motif in the center here. So that was fun to use up that warp. And that brings us to an exciting project that we've been developing, a new class. and it's called Drawloom DEF. So it follows Drawloom ABC. What comes next after ABC of Damas and Opempta? Well, here is some double weave. This is my ocean-going one, lobsters and little crabs and fish and starfish, and here we got people, and then this one has colors going on, shaded colors in the warp and the weft. And so we explore different structures, and this is a class that's been under development now for 2 years. We're about to have our second session, so we have a group of people coming in to test it out, and it's going to be a class that we offer to people next year. And this is a half satin, kind of an interesting arrangement of the pattern shaft. So it's not a pointed threading, it's a little different. And here is a lace weave. Let's look at this one first. There we go. So these are just different diamond configurations. And this was a single unit. You could do these on a shaft draw on a big point, but here's my little beetle there showing the use of the single unit cord since it's turned sideways. Here I did the same beetle. I don't know if you can see it, it's subtle, but it's a cute little beetle there. And so what other structures do we get to explore in this Drawloom DEF? This is PK on the Drawloom. So things that maybe not all of us have thought about before. Summer and winter on the Drawloom. Look upside down. We've got fish down here at the bottom and little waves, and there's the sandy beach. Those are supposed to be worms in the dirt. I don't know if that really worked. Leaves, birds, and the sky, of course, in different structures of summer and winter. Here are the columns, and here are those little diamonds, and this is more of a plain weave-ish background. So you can do all those different variations. And on the summer and winter warp, I did a few other experiments. So that's taking an undulating twill draft and using it as a pattern for the Drawloom. And there's just using kind of a fancy twill pattern, but it's in the summer and winter, but using the twill as the profile. And let's go to these next. This is Lampas. And Justin Squizero helped us set this loom up. And in fact, he's going to be here next week as part of the DEF. He's going to present some wisdom about drawlooms and shedding systems in general, which is a fascinating topic to many of us. And so these are different variations on this Lampas structure theme. This is a twill variation and some plain weave variations. This one's a basket weave. And you can see the weave structures in the color. Like if I turn this one over, you can see the twill more clearly in the magenta there. And so this is some of the fun we're going to have next week that we've been getting ready for. Although by the time you see this video, probably that week will be past. And then we have another warp that can do all of these different things. So interestingly, this is a pattern unit of 3 threads, but it's a 4-shaft twill. We've got the combo going, meaning we have a big, it's not a point threading. I have an interesting shaft threading, and we're using the single units. I actually use the single units for the block design, so you can do something like this or this. Maybe a little hard to explain, but here on this one with the deer, you can see I made a single unit pattern here, but they're the blocks that I threaded up in these sizes. So I had brown cords here, white cords, brown cords, white cords. So my pattern of single unit cords was in the increments of the profile. And if that doesn't mean anything to you, that's okay, because look at the pretty leaves. So the configuration of the loom lets you do leaves like this, or you could do the leaves all in a row, or you could do them like this. One more project to show you for this year in review. We call it our Tieup Managerie. So you can see this is all one piece. And we start here with the chicken and twill, both in the foreground and the background. And then we have chickens in all these different structures and combinations of structures. See, here's a straight twill and a broken twill. And so we'll just kind of move these along. Lots of different damask structures and different combinations. And even combined here a 6-shaft twill with a 3-shaft twill. That's kind of interesting. And we did set up the loom with half units. So that's a 3-shaft twill in both designs. That's why I can have more detail in the design. And then we have even a plain weave background with a 6-shaft twill. That one's kind of tricky to get the sheds. And then a lace weave. And then some of the things that we just saw, the summer and winter and the lampas. And so this shows that you can do all those structures on one warp with the countermarch, but we tie everything up, well, not everything, but a lot of things, we tie them up differently for the projects that are dedicated to a certain structure. So in DEF, we just explore a lot of detail about the intricacies of the equipment and the different structures that you can use. So look forward to that next year if you're intrigued.